Welcome to my program, Bashy's Corner. In this program, we are used to inviting very special guests, people who have something different to say than the mainstream politician or mainstream media. On 3rd December 2015, this year, Denmark would hold its referendum to find out if Danish people will support the nationalist policies or a more open Europe or much more cooperating Europe. On personal level, I have been very much against the European Union for many, many years until I became chairman of ENAR, European Network Against Racism, and saw that on Commission and Parliament level there were more progressive forces than on Danish national level. But today I have invited a special guest, and we would like to discuss with him not only the referendum but also the asylum seekers who are coming, who are put under this word migrant, and what should be done to tackle this issue. Welcome to my program, Lave. Broch.
Yes, thank you
so much.
You are
from People's Movement Against EU.
Yes, I am.
Could you please explain to my viewers what is this People's Movement?
Of course. The Danish People's Movement, we are a cross-political movement that has existed for 43 years.
Okay.
We have been represented in the EU Parliament since the first direct election in 1979. Mm-hmm. We are not supporting Danish membership of the EU, but we are strong supporters of international cooperation.
Okay.
Our work is built on 4 pillars, you could say. That first pillar is democracy, that we want a living democracy. Second pillar is the environment, that we want a sustainable environment. Third, that we want the Nordic welfare state. And the fourth, that we want to show global solidarity. So our no to the EU is a yes to the world, and that has been very important for us from the beginning. We have a member in the parliament, Rina Ronja Kari, and I am her substitute.
Okay, but then the question comes, if your movement is against European Union, but you're still sitting in the parliament there, does it make any sense to you?
It does, because that it became a yes doesn't mean that us who are against the EU, that we should stop become active democratically. I am still living in Denmark, I'm still a Danish citizen, but what I can see is that the government and the yes parties are not in respect with my views on questions of the EU. Even if I'm a member of the EU Positive Party, the Social Liberal Party, then the People's Movement give me that possibility that I can actually support an EU critical view.
So your movement has people from different political parties in Denmark. Do they agree on something?
We do. As I said, the 4 pillars we agree about: democracy, welfare, environment, and global solidarity. And that's out from our platform that we actually work in the EU Parliament. So if it's Rina or me, doesn't make a change, even if I'm social liberal and she's from the Red-Green Alliance.
Yes. So you just said that you believe in international cooperation, not so much EU cooperation.
Exactly.
But EU is also part of international cooperation.
But EU is very differently if you look at it. The way EU is constructed, when EU is a centralized supranational union, where decisions are being moved to EU, then the Danish parliament cannot change them anymore. In the EU, every time an area is becoming supranational in the EU, for instance, agriculture, trade policy, many other things has been moved to the EU. And when that happens, only the EU Commission has the right to make law proposal. And the EU Commission is not elected by the people. So that means that you get a bureaucracy which is not possible to change after an election, and I think that's a big democratic deficit. Also, Denmark has only 1.1% of the votes in the Minister Council. So let's say that we support a Nordic welfare system and the EU will get power over our welfare in the future. Then it will be very, very difficult for us to fight for the fight for changes in the system, because first you have to convince commissioner, and after that you will have a vote where we almost have nothing to say.
Okay, let's get back to the referendum, because that is the issue of our interview. Many people in Denmark do not know actually what is this opt-out
Yes.
What is that we are having this referendum? Can you tell our viewers?
Yes.
In easy to understand.
I will try to do that. In the referendum in 1992, when we had a referendum about the Maastricht Treaty, a majority of Danes voted no to the Maastricht Treaty.
Yes.
And then the politicians sat down and they negotiated, and a majority of the parliament invented the 4 opt-outs. Then we had a new referendum in 1993, and after that the 4 opt-outs were established, and one of them is the opt-out of justice and home affairs.
Yes.
Another one is the euro, and then you have the defense, and then you have the union citizenship.
Yes.
But the opt-out about justice and home affairs means that Denmark can cooperate internationally on questions of justice and home affairs. But we cannot give EU sovereignty over justice and home affairs.
Okay.
And for me this is a very important thing, because I like international corporations, but I don't want democracy to be undermined. And I think if you move the questions of surveillance of citizens, of like CIA investigation things, if you move questions of police, questions of extraditions, of terrorist law, fight against terror is a very serious thing. And I think we need to sometimes learn from our mistakes. We must be able to change laws.
Yes.
And if we move that to the EU, it will be very difficult for Denmark to change it again.
Now the question is that when all political parties sat down and said, okay, maybe this is good for us to join Maastricht Treaty, then what's the problem with that? If they, politicians represent people.
Well, they don't represent people, because there was a no
They're
in the
elected.
referendum. Yes, they're elected, but the thing is with democracy that you have a frame which is our constitution.
Sure.
And the politicians cannot change the constitution. That's the foundation for our democracy. If they want to do something which is changing the frame, then they have to ask the people. And the people said no to hand over sovereignty to the EU on the Maastricht Treaty. Then the politicians said, oh, we cannot change the frame as we want, we will try to change it again.
Okay.
And they got a yes with 4 opt-outs. Those opt-outs are then the frame they have to work inside. And I think it's very good we have constitution and frames for politicians.
So we are focusing very much at the moment on justice and home affairs.
That is the question in this referendum. This referendum is about, shall EU have supranational power over justice and home affairs, or shall Denmark cooperate in an interstate relationship with other countries?
So you are afraid of missing that Danish influence on its own lawmaking?
I would say not only Danish, I would say the citizens' influence, because I think when I look at what's happening in the United States and in the EU on several issues of justice policy, I see big problems. When you start a war on terror, there are sometimes human rights issues which has to be raised. There are questions of privacy. Should the state have the right to listen to your phone? Should they have the right to follow you and see where you're walking and so on?
Even look at your emails and
yes, everything like that. When you take an airplane, they have the government. If it will be a yes, the Danish government want to register on an EU level a supranational register of 40 different things, more than that, every time you take an airplane. For instance, the food you eat. If you eat halal food, it will be registered.
Yes, right.
Bashy eats halal food. If a Jewish person eats kosher, it will be registered. I think this kind of surveillance society can be very dangerous, and we must be flexible. And there, to have national control over the justice and home affairs gives us the possibility to learn from mistakes. We must fight terror, but we must have democracy.
Coming to surveillance of society, some people say that it's good that we have an eye on what is happening in society so that we can catch criminals very quickly.
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
I think we should be more targeting the people we are suspecting being criminals than instead of targeting everyone in society. When my grandmother, who died last year, was taking an airplane, she actually was stopped because she had a little thing for her nails, you know. I think that the way we are making a control society has gone too far. And there needs to be democratic control. I don't think it's wrong that we fight terror, but if you look at Paris or if you look at Omar, who was doing the attack in Copenhagen, then we could have used totally different means. Actually, Omar was a man who asked for help. We could have stopped him.
He was in jail before.
Yes, he was in jail before. Okay. We could have stopped him if our authorities had the resources to do that. But unfortunately, we are using a lot of efforts to make registers over every single human. And imagine every time you take a flight trip, it will be registered what seat you are sitting on, what food you are eating, a whole pattern of your behavior. And that is an extremely expensive project the EU is working on.
But Denmark, a Danish government actually is claiming that if we do not cooperate on this supranational level, then Denmark will be actually a target of more crime. People will come from East Europe and maybe from South, you know, and rob the banks or, you know, do other criminal acts, you know. Don't they have a point in that?
No, I think it's what we used to call a frightening campaign. Before elections, the government sometimes try to frighten the population. If you look at Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, which are three Western European countries who has not handed over power over justice and home affairs to the EU because they are not in the EU. Norway, Switzerland and Iceland does not have more crimes than EU countries. You don't have to be more scared if you walk in the streets of Geneva than if you walk in the streets of Athens or London. So I don't think that it is a question that we will be targeted. Norway, Iceland and Switzerland are not targeted more. We can do exactly what they do. We can actually use our intelligence to create laws that in an intelligent way are fighting crimes. I am not a supporter of stronger punishments or that you treat prisoners inhumanly. I think actually we must try to create a society where we prevent crimes, but also when we have prisoners, that we work on creating good citizens of the prisoners we have. So, and we can do that without giving power to the EU.
We know that Sweden actually have more progressive politicians than we have in Denmark. But the Swedish EU Commissioner, Cecilia Malmström, actually she wants to have a united police, a united police force,
yes,
so that they can deal with on a federal level.
Yes, I think that's very bad.
Is she going out of her way? Or?
Yes, I think that when she is talking about something like FBI, a federal police for the EU, I think this is a problem because if it will become a yes in the referendum, then actually the EU can develop a federal police. And who is control of that federal police? Who are guarding the guardians? The old saying. We have to be very aware that we are not creating a police state and we are creating a super state with the EU, a huge super state which has its own police force, which starts to listen to your phone call, emails and investigate things. We need to have democratic control. That's why I support a no in the referendum, the 3rd of December.
You also talked about the plans to make a common register. Yes. Especially for airports, you know, and people who will be on no-fly list, you know. Yeah. Their argument is that we want to have a safe EU, yes, where nobody can come from outside by plane and commit crime, you know. Yes, yes. Don't they have a point in this argument?
I think you should put people on a list who are already a threat. So you don't let them fly, but that you take everyone, a fishing woman from northern Jutland and a child from Bornholm and put on a list. I don't think that makes sense. I think that we are spending a lot of money on making surveillance on every citizen instead of focusing on who are actually suspected criminals. And if we had used more efforts actually to prevent Omar, the terrorists in Paris, they were also on a police list of suspected criminals. So you could actually have given them more resources to go after those they suspect, to follow their patterns instead of following ordinary citizens' patterns. I think we are building up something like they had in old Eastern Europe, in East Germany, like Stasi. It's not the road we shall walk.
But there is a democratic control on whatever in EU does. You have a parliament, you have a council of ministers, you have commission, then you have national government who say, hey, don't do that.
There is very big darkness over many of these things. If you look at Frontex, which is the EU border agency, they have made a lot of agreements, and I have tried to look into openness and see what they have. And even in the EU system, there is criticism that is too dark. There is too much shadows over what the work they're doing.
And who is in those shadows?
That's the questions. What is actually happening out there? And both the Europol and the Frontex organizations are organizations that do not want public control. And I think if we should, let's say, hypothetically consider a yes, then I think we should demand that there was total openness, at least afterwards, that there should be 1 year, and then you could actually see what Frontex and Europol were doing, so you could actually charge people if they make law mistakes, violate the law. Yes.
Let me ask you a question. Let's say a person commits a crime in Denmark and runs away and to go to Romania or to Italy. Don't you think it's a good idea to have a arrest warrant, where through certain system we can yank that person from there and bring back to Denmark?
Yes, I think it's fine, we have it, but we need to have also democratic and legal control with that arrest warrant. We are actually already today members of the EU arrest warrant, but we are it on an interstate relationship. And after yes, this arrest warrant will change to become super state arrest warrants. And that will make problems for our democracy. For instance, if we in the future there will come a change, it will be only the EU Commission which can change it. What if we find out that we actually think it's a good idea not to do things like the EU wants to do? I think we need the flexibility. Of course we shall exchange people, but we can also see already today big human rights problems. For instance, a Spanish car washer was sent to Italy from Spain, sentenced to 14-year prison for something he didn't do. And this is because this system is not really good when it comes to securing people rights, human rights.
And then the protection.
I think there are several examples that EU citizens has heard that when you come to, let's say you come to Bulgaria and someone said Bashy was here, perhaps he did something, then they will say in the court, it's best for you not to have translators. You shall do it in Bulgarian. There are examples like this where the human rights are not protected. And I think we need a system where Denmark can say, no, we will not send this person because the court case seems to be very weird. Perhaps there is not a foundation for making a court case against a person that another state wants from us. So we need democratic control.
Now, I would like to come to another very important topic which is very related to this referendum, and that is about the issue of refugees and asylum seekers and few migrants,
Yes.
Danish government said at one point they will not take any migrant.
Yes.
And then they said, okay, we are going to take 100.
Yes.
And then Mr. Prime Minister, changed it to 1,000.
Yes.
What happened?
I don't know. He is he acted very weirdly, I must say.
Okay.
But the thing is that Denmark has the right to take any amount of refugees we want to take. When we have the opt-out on the Justice and Home Affairs, we can do everything we want to do to help refugees. And I think we must do much more. I think we shall look up the reason why people become refugees. The EU is standing for weapon trade with regimes that violate human rights. That weapon trade must stop. I think we should look at the trade policies that sometimes undermine development in other countries. But we also have to look at how we help people in the near area. How do we help United Nations? Most refugees in Syria, they are still in the area. 7 to 8 million are living in Syria. They are afraid of their lives. There is still war going on. We need to create safe zones. We need to help Jordania. We need to help Lebanon, Turkey, other places where people came. But we should do that through the United Nations, because it is important that the help goes to the refugees and is not used politically for any other government purpose or other things.
So would it help that instead that people run and come to Europe in an uncontrolled way, that there are camps in certain countries, whether Turkey or Lebanon or Jordan, from where United Nations and EU together can say, okay, we'll take so many refugees and we'll put them and relocate them.
Yes.
And they can apply, and if their case is fine. Do you think it's a good solution?
I think that would be a brilliant solution. I think we should definitely support the United Nations in doing this. But we also have to look at a more global perspective on this question. I was in the refugee camp in Tindouf in Algeria. There are 150,000 refugees who have been there for more than 40 years now.
It's just like Palestinians.
Just like the Palestinians. And there are refugees around the world which are sitting and waiting for peace in their homeland. And we need to help them so they don't live in Tindouf. People were having very little food. When you ask a child, what is your favorite food, she will say food from World Food Program. You know, it's the bags they are throwing to the refugees. Imagine growing up in a refugee camp like this. I think that if you look at what the EU has done lately, the situation has been the last years to cut down on the help to World Food Program, cut down on the help to United Nations. Then you make speeches in the EU drinking a champagne and saying, now we will take a few refugees. It is good that we can give safe ways out from the refugee camps. But we should also then prioritize, so we also help, you know, is it a person who needs operations, is it a person with special needs, that we actually help people who are in danger of being in those refugee camps.
On more personal level, I know that both your father and your mother's father,
yes,
grandfather, they were officers in Denmark and Norway during Second World War.
Yes.
And later became refugees in Sweden.
Yes.
Do you think there are parallels in that situation and today when refugees are running for their life?
Yes, I think. And it's something that I often think about actually in this situation, because when my father, for instance, he was 30 years older than my mother, and he was an officer in Denmark. When he escaped to Sweden, he was taking a fishing boat.
And now we are destroying fishing boats.
And now the EU wants to destroy fishing boats. The way they talk about refugees, I also feel is related to me, because refugees are people running from war. My grandfather in Norway, he was from northern Norway. It was a total war zone. My mother and my grandmother stayed in Norway with an uncle of mine who later died, though he was just a little boy. But the thing is that what they experienced, my grandmother is coming out of a house, German soldiers are pointing with guns in her face. They later moved into the house, bombs were falling and so on. That is the same situation refugees are experiencing today. Just in Syria and other places in the world, people are escaping from dying, from catastrophe, from violence. And I think it's a thing we have to do as humans to other humans, that we should help refugees.
So how do you want Denmark then to act? How do you want they should be part of the solution of asylum seekers who are running for their life?
Yes, I think that, as I said, we need to look at how to prevent people from becoming refugees. I think it's a big moral scandal that EU and the EU system has been supporting weapon trade to regimes that violate human rights. For instance, if you take Syria, during more than 10 years, France were selling weapons to the Assad government, weapons which are today being used by Assad soldiers against citizens. Saddam Hussein, he bought a lot of weapons for billions of euros or kroner he bought in the EU. And some people would then say, but it's not EU selling weapons, it's some company. Yes. But actually, EU has developed a defense agency, which is also in the EU treaty. And that defense agency is promoting weapon sales to regimes that violate human rights. So I think there we shall look. We must look at how we can help the UN on the place, but we must also look at how can we help the ordinary refugee.
So
make it possible to apply for asylum, for instance.
If Denmark votes yes, let's say, then would it be, and then they regret later, you know?
Yeah.
What will happen then? Could they just go back?
If we vote yes, there is only a possibility to leave the European Union, which is not so easy to do, but you cannot roll back. If you give EU power over surveillance of citizens, for instance, or you give EU power over extradition of Danish citizens to other countries in the EU, then you can never take it back again. Then EU will have the supranational power over deciding how citizens shall be surveilled. And we will not necessarily have the democratic control or being able to use our courts to prevent things. Already with the arrest warrant today, there are more than 30 things where it doesn't have to be illegal in Denmark, and other countries can claim that you should be extradited to that country.
So if I ask you to look into the camera,
yes,
and tell the people who are going to vote, and of course they will vote and they should vote,
yeah,
why should they vote no?
Yes, I think people should vote no the 3rd of December because it's the best for democracy and it's the best for human rights. With a no, we secure that we can, in the boat time, cooperate with EU countries and other countries in the world to fight cross-border crimes. But we will also secure with a no that we have democratic control over the justice and home affairs. I think it's very important we don't give EU power over surveillance, over extradition, over criminal law and all other things which has to do with justice policy. On those areas, we need to have democratic control. We need to be able to change the laws if we see something is done wrong. So vote no the 3rd of December.
Anyway, the survey, latest survey is inclined to that there will be a no.
Yes.
I don't want to take a position no or yes, but I'm very happy that my viewers have heard you, seen you, and they will make up their mind if they want to vote yes or no, but vote they should. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Bashy.
I was happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank
happy
you.
to have you here.
Thanks.